For practice it, self-check 2.34 bad news, we are to suppose that we are trying to write a program that produces the following output using loops. The program below is an attempt at a solution, but it contains at least 4 major errors. We need to identify and fix them all. This is what our output is supposed to be. Our first line is going to be odd numbers 1 through 21, and then our next line is going to be odd numbers 1 through 11. So, first, we need to have this public static final int max odd is equal to 21, and what this is doing is it's basically making the int max odd and it's making it unchangeable. Final means that it is unchangeable, it cannot be changed, so it's always going to be equal to 21. Next we have this method public static void write odds, and we have a for loop inside of here. There's a little bit wrong with this for loop. First, we look and we see the header for it. So int count is equal to 1. And this is going to run as long as count is less than or equal to max odd minus 2. Well, if max odd is 21, it doesn't really make sense for it to be minus 2. So this is the first thing we can get rid of, this minus 2 part. And then we have count plus plus. However, since we are going through odd numbers, if we do count plus plus, it's going to go 1, 2, 3. But if we look at line 8, we have count is equal to count plus 2. And instead of this being here, this should be in the header. So we can get rid of this here and place it in the header right here to replace count plus plus. And this is basically going to make it go from 1 and then plus 2 right here to 3 to 5 to 7, etc. We can make this smaller by using the plus equals operator, and this should work well. And then after this, we have this line right here that prints the last odd number. Although this was included in the code, it's not really needed, especially because we took out the max odd minus 2, and it's now just max odd. So instead here, what we can do is rely on our for loop to output all of these values. So now we really just need a space right here. So we make this a print ln and get rid of this and get rid of this comment, or we can replace this comment and just say that it prints a new line. And our for loop prints each odd number that is correct, and this is our method public static void write odds. So this should output the entire first row when we call it in our main method right here. Now, as we said earlier, we can't change our max odd integer because it is declared as final. So this line is incorrect. So we can take this out. And as of now, really the only way to do this, since max odd needs to be final, we can't divide it by 2. So what we're going to have to do is make a new method, and we can call it write odds half, like this. And we can write this method. We can call it public static void write odds and then half. So this is the starter for our method, and in here we're basically just going to have the same thing, except we are going to take our max odd and divide it by 2, since if we look here, right here, we're only printing out about half of this list right here. So we can declare our int half, we can call it half, and then we can take this and set it equal to max odd divided by 2. And this will give us, since there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it's going to round down to 10 actually. So what we're going to need to do is add 2 in here. That way it can get all of the values like this, and now we will have our for loop. And this for loop can really just copy this for loop. The only thing that's going to change is this right here. It's going to be less than or equal to half. And everything looks good. If we submit this, it is incorrect because we have some missing semicolons. So we can put a semicolon there and then try to run it again. And our last error is that we need a bracket right here to complete this method, because we have our for loop and we never put a last closing brace for this method. If we submit this, it runs and it passes all the tests correctly. So to go over what we did, we have our main method here, and it calls right odds, which prints out this first line right here, and then it calls right odds half, which prints out this line right here. So we have a public static final int, max odd is equal to 21, and this is our max odd right here. We can also, if we wanted to, up here declare our half. So instead of having it in our for loop or in our method, we can have it as public static final int, and this is probably the better way to declare it since it'll be a final and it cannot be changed. And we'll call it half is equal to max odd plus 2 divided by 2. And then we can just get rid of this line right here. And we can run it, and if we put a semicolon, it should still work the same. So after we've done that up here, we've declared our variables up here. We go into our first method that'll print out the first line. And we have a for loop, and it starts at 1 to give us this first value 1 here. And then it goes up until we reach 21. And we are incrementing it by 2 every single time. That way it gives us an odd number every single time. And we're just printing that out with a space, and then we are printing a new line when we're done with that. So that is quite simple. Now we will move on to our next method right here. In this method, we have our int count starting at 1, and it's going to go up to half, incrementing by 2 every single time. Next, we have our main method, as stated earlier, which just outputs the results. We needed a max odd plus 2, so it would get all of the values. If it was just max odd and we submitted it like this, it would not include the 11. And that is just because how dividing this integer by 2 rounds it down. So if we have a plus 2, it'll round it up and it will include this 11, and we can submit it, giving us the correct answer.